In this video, we're going to talk about what FTP is and why it's important. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol. And basically, that's the method for transferring files from your computer to a server. Up until this point, you've been coding files on your local computer, and then you've been viewing them in a browser to see what they look like. A browser is a tool for reading a certain type of file, just like a word processor is or a spreadsheet program is. It doesn't inherently mean that anything is up on the web when you use a browser to view it. So once files are on a server, they will have a discrete location that can be found with an address. We're all familiar with this. It's a URL. That stands for Uniform Resource Locator. And all that means is that the addresses are formatted in a specific way that can be parsed or read by the browser so that they can be found. And we'll talk about the URL a little bit later. So first of all, just to help you understand what FTP does, this is what we've been working on so far, coded HTML pages. We've been writing the code and, like I said, viewing them in a browser, but they haven't been going anywhere. With FTP, we actually are putting those files on a server, right? So we're taking that file from your local system and putting it up there on the server. Once it's on the server, then we actually can have that exchange between the server and the browser where the files are read, the code is rendered, and you actually have something that lives up on the internet. So let's take a look at a URL for a second. Here's one that I grabbed from the Lord's website. The HTTP part stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. That's just the protocol for rendering web pages, turning the code into the visual design that you see. So just like the FTP, the File Transfer Protocol, gets the files onto the server, the HTTP, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, gets those files off the server and turns the code into the visualization of the file. The two forward slashes indicate the start of the location, the address of the content. The next piece of the location is the name of the server or the domain name. And then the forward slashes indicate sublocations. Think of these as folders. So in this example, on the server called lords.edu, there's a folder called academics. And then within that folder, there's another folder called digital and media studies. The last element of the address of any URL is the name of the file. And typically that's going to end in a .html or .htm extension. So what's the name of the file in this case? When you don't see an explicit file name, the file is using a special reserved name index. So in this case, if we were going to write out really the whole address, we would end with index.html. That would be the file name in this particular case. You'll see as we start working on websites rather than just web pages, that index.html is the name that you're going to use for your first page as a best practice. And that allows you basically to drop that file name from the address like we saw in this example. There's a couple of different ways to achieve your file transfers from your local system to the server. Every PC includes a default FTP using the command line, and we'll take a look at that. Now, this is a very cumbersome way to do it. I don't recommend it, but this is the very first way that FTP occurred, and I think it's useful to see it and gives you a good sense of the basic operation of file transfer. But in reality, what you really want to do is use an FTP client. So there are lots of programs that perform this function of transferring files from your system to a server. You just need certain information. You need the server name, you need your own username and password, and sometimes you also need a path if you have a starting path where the files are going to go. So I will also demonstrate one of these file transfer protocols, and there are several free programs. A couple that I can recommend to you are CyberDuck and FileZilla, and I'll do a demo on CyberDuck just so you can get a sense of what that looks like. That gives you a sense of FTP. In the next couple of videos, we'll actually be practicing moving files onto the server.